початку трансляції.
Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who joins us. My name is Oleg Atamanova, and Ukrainian Media Center Ukrinform continues its operation today. It's day 420 of the full-scale invasion of our homeland by a Russian aggressor, and now we will be talking about the restriction of Ukrainian imports to certain countries of the European Union. I want to introduce our speaker today. It's Roman Slastyon, the Director General of Ukrainian Agrarian Business Club. Good afternoon, Mr. Roman. We know that recently Poland and then a number of other European countries imposed the restriction on imports and even transit of Ukrainian grain. What should we do about it? What's the solution? We see that today Romania and Bulgaria joined that restriction. What is the solution that we see? Good afternoon. Really, the restriction by the government of Poland on import and blocking, in fact, of the transit of all the agricultural products from Ukraine was a shock to a certain extent and kind of misunderstanding by our association and other associations of the agrarian products manufacturer, because it was sudden. It was a sudden restriction of our capabilities of export, and many companies, they have huge reserves that were and are currently on the way under the contracts which were entered into way before, and some of those agreements, they were entered into even before the beginning of the full-scale invasion. In fact, we were providing with our products the companies in Poland and other European countries. So that was a kind of a shock for us. There were certain nuances as to the discontent on part of Poland, specifically Polish farmers, with regard to the movement of the grain, the transit of the grain. They were probably seeing all those volumes of the grain and other agricultural products coming to other countries through Poland, to other European countries, in fact, or even other countries all around the world, in Asia, Africa, and other parts of the world. But I think emotionally some trigger worked, and as a result, we're seeing this, to a certain extent, irrational, unweighed resolution by the Polish government, and we also see, we observe this chain reaction in other countries. For example, the same restrictions imposed on the large number of agricultural products was exercised by the government of Hungary. There are still negotiations going on about the transit, and transit should be going on through those countries. As to Romania, they did not restrict either import or transit for the time being. They have certain discussions inside their country, and they are being cautious as to the further exports and imports of Ukrainian products to Romania. However, there is no such influence in Romania. However, all those resolutions, they are contrary to the European legislation, because the European market works as the joint market of Europe, and crossing the Polish border is crossing the border of the whole European Union. So such solutions should not be taken on the level of the separate government, but they belong to the competence of European Commission, and this is what our government officials appealed to. They appealed to the agrarian associations in Brussels. I mean, and our association did it as well. We want to find the solution for this situation. We understand it might have been overheated, and we have to revert to the constructive dialogue, to rational approach, to find some joint compromise resolutions, because the blockade of transit honestly is a way too harsh measure, and the blockade of import, maybe even temporary as it was stated until the 30th of June, is to a certain extent is a bit too harsh step, to severe mechanism, and in the nearest perspective it should have been reconsidered, because de facto we have conditions of trade and access to the European markets even worse than they were before the beginning of the full-scale invasion. Even when we were trading with quotas, we could trade above those quotas with certain fees and levies, but there was no such harsh restriction of our imports to either Slovakia, Hungary, Poland, Bulgaria, or other countries. Mr. Roman, there was information that the solution was found in case of Poland, but in your opinion, what it should be, what this solution should look like? Yes, there were negotiations going on during these Easter holidays, as we were informed. The Minister of Agrarian by Mykola Solskis, the Minister of Agrarian Policy, also the first Vice Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko, and the Minister of Economy of Ukraine, they were taking part in those negotiations, and they reported that there are agreements as to the resumption of transit that should be reestablished on the night from Thursday and Friday. There's a number of technical moments. It should only be a transit that should not be left in Poland, because this is the major concern of the Polish farmers and the government as well. We may ensure this mechanism operation through assistance of the carriages or the trucks or the GPS tracking by the Polish government, so that we ensure the flow of our products, the exports of our products to the countries of their destination. You mentioned Romania. Romania is an important country in terms of transit of our grain. So until there is no solution, do we have any work going on to find such solution? Because again, this country is quite important for us. There is a communication with all the neighboring countries, obviously, all the countries of European Union, both Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania. All of them are very important to us from point of view of export. They are the key countries in terms of solidarity ways imposed by the established by the European Union is the initiative which is called to facilitate the export of agrarian products from Ukraine using transit to through their territory to other countries, but it does not necessarily include the export to these neighboring countries of the European Union, because before the full-scale invasion we had very close trade relations, and now they only got deeper, and we can see through the prism of the interests of Polish farmers, but we should take into account the interests of other groups inside Poland, such as processing industry, consumers, first of all, because we've all heard and we know about the food inflation, which is no news, not only in Ukraine, but in European Union as well. It's one of the important key matters. After the beginning of the full-scale invasion, the prices for food grew all around the world due to the food blackmailing, this instrument that Russian Federation uses. The prices went up to the highest, to the peak within the last 20 years is the index of FAO, and thanks to arrangement of the export ways from Ukraine through the grain corridor and through the land corridors, the prices went a little bit down further on. This is what helped settle down this food inflation. And the same is with all those, the same story is with all those countries. The Polish farmers or the farmers of other neighboring countries, we may see through the prism of their interests as to the possible sale of their grain at price of 350-360 euro per ton. Those were the peak prices, and it's surprising why the majority of agrarian manufacturers in Poland and other countries did not take advantage of that situation, and they did not expect for the price to go up even more, and they were waiting until the moment when the global trends resulted in reduction of price to 260-270 euro per ton. So those were the levels of prices, still high, but they were existing even before the full-scale invasion. If we check the price indicators for food, the last years 2018, 19, 20 and 21, the prices for food were way lower than those that I just mentioned after dynamics that we observe. Mr. Roman, before the full-scale invasion, what was the volume of export of our agricultural products to the European countries? So what are the risks? What can we lose in this situation? Well, we had quite significant volumes of export to European Union. I cannot give you the exact figures right now, but they were quite significant, and obviously we had very diverse geography of exports. The main buyers for grain and oil crops and fodder, they were the countries of Southern Europe mostly, Spain, Italy, other countries, but also a lot of exports were accounted for the countries of Eastern and Northern Europe. For example, Poland itself was procuring the sunflower seed oil, the beans, the legumes. There was an extensive list of products that we exported to Poland. On our part, probably each of us sees that in the shelves of the supermarkets, the number of Polish products only increased, which is good from the point of view of the consumer, because there is choice, there is competition, and it's always good for economy. Dear colleagues, questions from the floor. Anastasia Kravchenko, Ukrinform. I have question about the losses of European exports. There are trucks, there are trains sitting in the border for a week. What will be the amount of losses it will result in for Ukrainian economy? And in view of those losses, will it influence the capacity of Ukrainian agrarians to continue the sowing campaign, because we know it's poorly funded, and what the agrarians make on export, they invested in their sowing campaign. Will this situation influence our capacity to export generally? Well, there are definitely losses. The calculation is not yet over because the situation is not yet fully resolved. Some may still expect for some options for export. They did not unload their trucks and railway cars, they do not forward them to other countries, so the suspension of the products on the border results in losses definitely. Unfortunately for a number of manufacturers, if they pass through the Ukrainian customs and they have not yet crossed the Polish border, such products are being returned to Ukraine and they are considered to be imported, which entails the payment of VAT and other custom levies, which will result in significant losses. It's a bit too early to talk about the final figures so far, but the biggest problem is that this is going on during the peak of the sowing campaign. After these continuous rains, the agrarians start sowing their crops and now they have no understanding what should they do next, what crops should they sow, and whether it will be necessary in future, whether they will be able to export it, because what we see now is the imposition or overlapping of a number of negative factors. First of all, a very bad operation of the grain corridor, the blockade by Russian inspectors of the operation of the inspection teams. There was no single inspection for entry of the vessels during 17th, 18th of April for the entrance into Ukrainian ports. The negotiations in Turkey are still underway as to the resumption of at least the inspections of at least 2 to 3 vessels per day, which is absolutely not in accord with the requirements and the volumes of grain that we have in our reserves, but it's at least some step to demonstrate our partners, United Nations and Turkey, within the framework of the grain agreement, that they have influence and they comply with their obligations. We understand that if we don't have either grain corridor and we have this problem in the western border, in this case the situation may happen that many agrarians would just refuse to continue the sowing campaign, because under these indefinite conditions we understand that last year many agrarians who sown their crops, they were not able to export it after harvesting. So what are the conditions that our agrarians need? What should they want to see and when? Well, our agrarians would like to see this solution to be found yesterday, but we understand that it's quite complicated diplomatic negotiations. We should put our emotions aside here and proceed to the constructive dialogue. However, we hope that, and we would like the European Commission to be more actively involved in these negotiations and to comply with those obligations, with those agreements that we have between European Commission and Ukraine, including the one on the free access to the European markets and their access to our markets. We have more questions on the floor. Oleksiy Ryshkov, Zerno, the problems with Poland, Romania, Slovakia, with each separate country, is the separate story, or are they the links of the same chain? And plus Russia with the grain corridor, is it the same chain which is composed of all those links, or are they all separate situations? And another question, you mentioned that Polish farmers had not waited for the high price. What's your explanation of this situation? Well, as to this situation with the links of the same chain, the last month there was a letter from the governments of the countries Poland, Romania and Hungary and Slovakia and Bulgaria too. There was a letter as to the necessity of imposition of certain measures aimed at the restriction of Ukrainian imports. and compensation of losses inflicted to the farmers in those countries, because there is the opinion that the load is not being evenly distributed across the European countries. For example, the farmers in France or Spain, they have a little bit different picture than those in Poland or Romania or other countries bordering on Ukraine. Maybe it's certain reaction that not reaction, maybe it was a reaction to that letter, and there were some negotiations going on inside the European Union. And another important issue is the logistics, really, in the countries in the Eastern European Union. The logistics and infrastructure is not developed well enough to absorb such volumes of agricultural products, both their harvest, because the last year Poland had quite a good harvest, and it was overlapped by the situation with the necessity of export of our agricultural products through European land corridors. All those things are interrelated, but there is really a surprising coincidence that there is a blockade from different sides, even without waiting for the term of 18th of May, when Russians would want to suspend the operation of the grain corridor. We really can say that Russian propaganda, their hands could also help pour some oil to that fire. And the second question, why didn't Polish farmers wait for the prices to go up? It's quite surprising. Well, as to the price, it's difficult to give some specific answer, but on one hand there is information that some reassurances as to the growth further growth of the price were given by the government officials, the Polish government officials. We've seen that the resignation of the Minister of Agriculture of Poland, and it may be to some extent related to this situation. Thank you very much for this information. I'm reminding you, joining us was Roman Slastyon, Director General of the Ukrainian Agrarian Business Club. And our next briefing is in 10 minutes, and we will be talking about the situation in Kherson region. So bear with us. Trust in our armed forces, and glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes.